And joining us now to discuss the situation and potential for U.S. involvement is Kervin, a former lead intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance coordinator for the U.S. Army and the host of the podcast This Week Explained. Kervin, good to see you and thank you for joining. There were no statements from President Trump after his Situation Room meeting yesterday afternoon. Take us through your understanding of the president's decision process.
Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me on, especially with the turmoil that's going on right now in the Middle East. And it's what I can say from President Trump's perspective. And I believe him when he says that he had a deal for Iran and that if they would have made that deal, none of this would have happened within the 60 days. And I believe that because I have read the reporting and I understand what was given to the Iranians in order to agree to. What I think what happened here was the Iranians stalled, and they tried to stall because they knew they were close to at least being able to identify how to build the weapon. So what does Donald Trump do now? What does President Trump do now? He's got two options, and he could do both of these options. One option, and what Israel is really looking for American support for, is to hit these underground nuclear bunkers that are there, or these underground facilities that are creating the capabilities for a nuclear weapon. Now, Israel does not have the munitions in order to penetrate that far underneath and strike through the concrete of these facilities. And so they need U.S. munitions to be able to do that. That's what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been asking for. And then the second decision that President Trump can make, if he says we won't care about the nuclear facilities, but let's do regime change within Iran. That's another thing that Israel is looking for. And the reason for that is because a nuclear Iran with the regime they have now is very dangerous, not to Israel, but the Middle East as a whole.
Now, it seems within these two decisions, there's pros and cons to both of them. Maybe you could take us through how you see obviously the rewards are obvious, but what are the risks of trying to execute either one of those strategies or both?
I would say infamously, the U.S. is not very good at regime change. We did that in Iraq with Saddam Hussein. That turned out terribly for U.S. troops there, myself included, who was there that was fighting an insurgency. Tried to do it in Libya, Syria, all of these places, especially around the Middle East, and it seems to backfire, especially in recent history. So that's one of the pitfalls. You just don't know who is going to take power and what they're going to do with that. The other thing is, what's the retaliation, right? So if the U.S. gets involved in striking Iran, what is retaliation from other countries within the Middle East? But also, what's the Russian reaction to that? And then very dangerously, what is China's reaction to it? Because U.S. Naval assets are being moved from the Indo-Pacific into Central Command or CENTCOM into the Middle East in order to be part of this operation to help Israel in the defense of their nation.
Let's explore both of those a little further. We'll start with the blowback from allies Russia, China, and potentially North Korea as well. That sort of access between those countries. And then, of course, they have support in South America, but not militarily as threatening. It seems like Russia does have their hands full with what they're engaged in with Ukraine, and they're working with Israel to get their nuclear scientists out of Iran, it would seem. China, of course, threatening to invade Taiwan. Normally, you would think that would be the very next thing that would happen. If the U.S. goes into a country, then that justifies China's ability to go into Taiwan. But we have been reporting, as have others, that Xi has been sidelined and is the more hawkish of the factions within China. Does that potentially open up more opportunity for President Trump to then go into Fordo and these other underground bunkers with our stealth bombers?
To play very smartly. He has been in communications with Xi for economic reasons. Looks like bridging that gap of adversarial thought between the Chinese Communist Party and the United States. So kind of bridge that gap a little bit on the economic side. So, if there are some indications, and if within the intelligence community, we get indications that maybe the Chinese, and particularly Xi Jinping, is going to pull back away from Taiwan. The way we see that is, where ships are at a current location. Are they building up exercises that could then lead to, oh, this is an exercise, but now it becomes an operation? If we're seeing a pullback from that, that could give the U.S., President Donald Trump and the U.S. military that ability to start to attack, especially what you talked about, the Fordo nuclear site, which needs a massive bunker busting bomb in order to penetrate that area.
Now, Iran specifically, it seems like a split message. The Ayatollah is saying that they will strike U.S. targets, while their head minister is saying that they want diplomacy. How do you interpret that? Is it just, fighting for survival in terms of regime change? And is the U.S. potentially at risk from Iran?
I think that Supreme Leader Khomeini, he sees his days are numbered, right? He has seen all of the proxies from Iran. All of those leaders have been taken out one by the Israelis. And I do think he thinks he is next. And with that, it's much like a cat in a corner. What are they going to do once you've cornered Khomeini? And we're seeing that he is saying, we're going to go on the attack. The other people within the regime are probably a lot less hawkish on that because they want to survive, and they see a regime change as something that could be safe for them. Right now, so U.S. personnel in the Middle East, they're at a heightened danger area, but right now, as we stand, I am not seeing any indications that U.S. personnel are going to be targeted at this moment, but that could all change once the U.S. declares a strike on Iran.
We appreciate your insights this morning. Obviously, this is an hour-by-hour situation that we're watching closely. Kervin Oken, host of This Week Explained podcast. We'll see you soon, Kervin. Thank you.